Oh, honey, sit right down here on this old rocker with me and let me whisper a tale that's been clawing at my soul like a thorn in bare feet ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. You know how life has a way of sneaking up on you with its sharp edges when you're just trying to hold on to the good. Well, last Tuesday, I was up in that creaky attic again, the one full of cobwebs and memories that smell like mothballs and long-lost summers reimagined through boxes that ain't seen daylight in decades. My fingers all gnarled and spotted from 83 years on this earth. They trembled as I lifted the lid on this faded tin box, the kind Mama used to keep her sewing notions in back when thread and a prayer fixed most everything. Inside, tucked away like a secret too heavy to share, lay a bundle of letters tied with a frayed ribbon, yellowed edges, whispering of times when the world was at war and hearts broke quieter than a sigh. I untied that ribbon slow as molasses pouring on a winter morning, and the first envelope caught my eye, addressed to me in Tommy's scrawling handwriting, my big brother who we laid to rest in our minds after Vietnam swallowed him whole back in '68. Oh Lord, my breath hitched right there in the dust motes. Dancing in the sunlight slanting through the window, I slid it open with a shaky thumb and the words spilled out like blood from an old wound. Dear Ellie. I couldn't come home not after what I did, what the war made me do. Forgive me, but the shame it's eaten me alive. Tommy alive. In all these years from us, from me, his little sister who cried rivers when the telegram came saying he was missing, presumed dead, the paper crinkled in my grip as tears blurred the ink, and I sank to the floor, knees buckling like they did the day Daddy shipped out for World War II, leaving us to fend on that Iowa farm with rations and ration books and prayers for rain that never quite came. You see, darling, that letter, it wasn't just words. It was a ghost rising up, wailing about secrets buried deeper than the roots of our old apple tree, the one that still bears fruit, sweet as stolen kisses. Tommy had come back from Nam, a changed man. They said POW for 3 years in some jungle hellhole where the nights echoed with screams and the days blurred into nothing but survival. But he didn't wire us, didn't hitch a ride on that Greyhound home to the porch light. Mama kept burning every evening. No, he vanished into the shadows carrying a burden so dark it poisoned every dream he ever had. Something about a choice he made under fire of betrayal that saved his skin but cost another boy's life. And there in that attic with the weight of it crushing my chest, I felt the heartbreak anew, not just for him, but for all the pieces of us that shattered like fine china on a linoleum floor. Mama, she passed, knowing only the lie we told ourselves that he was a hero gone too soon, never dreaming her boy was out there alone, wrestling demons we couldn't even name. But oh, sweet child, through the sting of it all, through the sobs that shook this old body till I thought my ribs might crack, there's a flicker, a stubborn light that life's taught me to chase. It's the same hope that got us through the blackouts of '42 when we'd huddle by candlelight listening to FDR's voice crackle over the radio promising victory if we just held tight. Or the lean years of the Depression when Daddy traded eggs for flour and we laugh over soup made from nothing, pretending it was a feast. That letter, it ripped open old scars, sure, but it also mended something deep calling me to reach out, to forgive, to remember that family ain't perfect, but it's the thread that stitches us back together when everything else unravels. So pull up a chair and let Grandma Ellie take you back to the beginning, where the sun shone brighter on our little corner of America and the troubles were just clouds passing over fields ripe with promise. We'll walk this path together through the storms and the secrets, because in the end, darling, resilience is the quiet song that keeps the heart beating strong. Oh, darling, now that we've opened that door to the past, let me carry you back gentle as a breeze through the open window to those early days when life was simple as a game of hopscotch drawn in the dirt with a stick, and the biggest worry was whether the ice cream truck would make its rounds before supper. It was the summer of 1942. I reckon I was just turning 9 years old, living in that little white house on the edge of Willow Creek, Iowa, where the fields stretched out golden under the big blue sky, and folks knew your name before you even said it. Our family wasn't rich, mind you, after the Depression clawed at everybody like a hungry dog, but we had the good earth in each other, and that was wealth enough to fill a girl's heart right up. Daddy, he was a farmer through and through, broad-shouldered with calloused hands that could mend a fence or cradle a newborn calf with the same tender care. He'd wake before the roosters hollered, hauling himself out to the barn where the air smelled of hay and promised tending to the cows that gave us milk warm and fresh for breakfast. Mama was the heartbeat of our home, her apron always dusted with flour from baking bread that rose high as clouds in the oven or pies from the wild blackberries we'd pick along the fence row, Tommy and me dashing through the brambles, laughing till our sides ached, our fingers stained purple as sin. She had this way of singing soft hymns while she worked, her voice like honey dripping over cornbread, warming the chill off even the coldest morning. Tommy, my big brother, 2 years older and twice as bold, he was my shadow and my shield. We'd race across the meadow, kicking up dust, pretending we were riding the rails like those hobos who'd pass through town, sharing tales of far-off places with eyes full of wanderlust. Church was our Sunday anchor gathering in that steepled building with the bell that tolled deep and true, singing Amazing Grace till it echoed off the rafters, and the preacher's words about leaning on the Lord when times got tough. They settled in your bones like good soil after rain. Back then, America was pulling itself up by its bootstraps. Post-Depression folks scraping together what they could, trading eggs for sugar or mending clothes till they shone like new, and we kids learned early that a smile and a helping hand could turn scarcity into plenty. But even in that warmth, darling, there were whispers of change, rustling like leaves in the wind, the kind that makes you pull your shawl tight around your shoulders. One crisp autumn day, not long after Pearl Harbor lit the world on fire, Daddy came home from the co-op, his face etched with lines deeper than the plow furrows he turned in the spring. The war was calling, and though he was past the first rush of draftees at 38, they needed every able body to keep the home front strong. He sat us down by the kitchen table, the one with the oilcloth checkered red and white mama's hands, fidgeting with her apron strings, as he explained how he'd be joining up, not overseas, but working the fields for the government, driving tractors and baling hay to feed the troops across the sea. I remember the knot in my throat tight as a noose watching him pack that old duffel bag, his pipe tobacco scent lingering in the air like a promise he'd be back before the first snow fell. Tommy, he puffed up his chest, acting brave, but I saw the fear in his eyes mirroring my own, the way a fawn trembles at the edge of the woods. That night we huddled under the quilt, Mama telling stories of her own girlhood, how her pa had fought in the Great War and come home whole because faith and family were stronger than any bullet. Yet as the train whistle wailed in the distance, carrying Daddy away, my young heart cracked just a little, knowing the world outside our fence was changing faster than a summer storm. Life shifted gears after that, but we rolled with it like wagons on a rutted road, making do with what the good Lord provided. Ration books became our daily companion, stamps for sugar and tires, saving every scrap of fat to send off for the war, effort melting it down in the big iron pot out back. School carried on in that one-room building where Miss Hargrove taught us history and arithmetic, her lessons laced with pride in the American spirit, how our boys were fighting for freedom on beaches and in skies we'd only read about in the Gazette. I'd walk the mile there with Tommy kicking stones along the path, chattering about how I'd grow up to be a nurse like Clara Barton, helping the wounded just like the posters urged. Uncle Sam wants you plastered on every wall. At recess, we'd play war games, boys with sticks for rifles, girls bandaging imaginary hurts. But underneath the play, there was a real ache. The letters from Daddy come in sporadic yellow paper folded tight, telling of long days and homesickness for Mama's biscuits. The town pulled together tighter than ever, victory gardens sprouting up in every yard, ours bursting with tomatoes and beans that Mama canned by the shelf full, her hands red from the steam, but her smile steady as the sunrise. Neighbors gathered for quilting bees or barn dances, the fiddle music swinging us round in circles, forgetting the blackouts when we doused the lights, and listened to the radio's static voice of FDR promising that brighter days were coming if we just kept faith. Oh, but darling, joy had its way of peeking through the clouds like sun. After a downpour one, 4th of July, we had the best picnic, the whole town turning out with potato salad and watermelon so sweet it dripped down your chin. Tommy and I, we lit sparklers, watching the stars burst bright against the twilight sky, dreaming of the parades back east where the big bands played and heroes marched home to cheers. It was there by the creek later that evening with fireflies blinking like fairy lights that Tommy shared his first real secret, leaning close so Mama wouldn't hear. He wanted to fly planes like those aces in the newsreels, looping the loop over enemy lines. I giggled, telling him he best not, cause who'd protect me from the bully at school if he went off heroics. But deep down I swelled with pride for my brother, the way little sisters do see in the man he might become strong and true blue, like the flag waving from our porch. Those days they built something in us, resilience, maybe born from necessity, the quiet know-how of planting seeds in hard ground and trusting they grow tall. America was at war, sure, but on that Iowa farm, we were fighting our own battles, small ones, that taught us love was the mightiest weapon of all. As the years ticked by like the pendulum on the mantel clock, I grew into a young thing of 12 or so braids, giving way to curls pinned back for the school socials where we jitterbugged to Glenn Miller tunes, scratching from the phonograph. The war dragged on endless as a prairie horizon, letters from Daddy fewer but full of hope, talking of buddies he'd made and the day they'd all come marching home. Tommy, he started high school tall and lanky with a grin that could charm the birds from the trees, helping after classes with the harvest hauling shocks of corn that stood like soldiers in the field. Mama kept the home fires burning, taking in sewing for the Red Cross, making uniforms from bolts of wool that itched but served the cause. We'd listen to the newsreels at the picture show, heart swelling at the sight of tanks rolling and flags raising over Iwo Jima, knowing our sacrifices mattered from the tin cans we collected to the barns we bought with pennies saved from lemonade stands. Yet there was a shadow lengthening one even in 44 when a storm blew through fierce as the one brewing overseas, twisting the barn roof clean off and flooding the lower fields. We lost half the crop that year, Daddy still away, loving Mama to stare at the muddy mess tears mixing with the rain as she whispered we'd rebuild, because that's what Americans do, pick up the pieces and keep going. That flood, it was our first big test without Daddy's strong arms to lean on. Tommy stepped up plowing what he could with the old mule best while I weeded the garden till my back ached like an old woman's. The community rallied as always, bringing tools and timber neighbors, hammering side by side till the barn stood proud again, stronger even with beams from the Anderson place down the road. It taught me early, darling, that trouble comes, but so does grace, the way hands join in prayer or labor, making the load lighter. And oh, the little joys that peppered those years like wildflowers in the grass. The Christmas of 43 when rationing pinched tight, but Santa still found us with oranges from California sweet as gold, and our stockings and a corn husk doll for me that Mama stitched with love. We'd sing carols by the tree, a scraggly pine. Tommy dragged home the lights from save bulbs twinkling soft, reminding us that even in darkness, wonder finds a way. School let out for harvest, and I'd ride the wagon back loaded with squash and pumpkins, feeling the wind in my hair, free as a bird, soaring over the heartland, thinking this is America, land of plenty, even when the table's sparse. But secrets have a way of hiding in the corners of even the sunniest homes, and mine started brewing quiet like dough rising overnight. One spring afternoon, while Mama was at the ladies' circle discussing war stamps, I found an old photo tucked in Daddy's Bible, the one he left behind, showing him young and smiling with a girl who wasn't Mama, her arm linked and his eyes sparkling with something unspoken. I didn't tell a soul, just folded it back, heart fluttering with questions that felt too big for my 12 years, wondering if every family carried hidden stories like burdens under the bed. Tommy noticed my quiet spell, pulling me aside by the pump, asking what ailed me, and I almost spilled, but held my tongue, because some things you keep close till the time's right. That photo had planted a seed of wonder in me about the paths, not taking the loves that might have been teaching me early, that life twists unexpected as a river, changing course after rain. Still through it all, our early years wove a tapestry strong with threads of faith and family, the kind that holds when storms rage and wars rage farther still. By the time VE Day rolled around in 45, I was 13, gangly and full of dreams, the radio blaring victory cheers from Europe, and folks dancing in the streets of Willow Creek bonfires, lighting the night as we waved flags handmade from scraps. Daddy came home that summer, tanned and thinner, but whole, scooping me up in a bear hug that smelled of diesel and distant lands, his stories of the fields he'd worked spilling out like water from a cracked dam. We feasted that night on chicken Mama had saved for the occasion, fried crisp and golden with gravy thick as love poured over mashed potatoes from our own patch. Tommy slapped his back laughing till tears came, reliving the ache we'd carried so long, and I felt the world right itself like a top spinning true. But the war wasn't done. Japan still fighting fierce, and soon talk turned to the Pacific, where more boys would go, including cousins and friends from school. Our celebrations tempered with prayers for those still overseas, the bond drive going stronger than ever as we pitched in to bring them home swift. Those days shaped us, darling, building a backbone from the bones of hardship, the resilience that I carried through coming trials like a lantern in the fog. Oh, and the small town magic, it lingered in the everyday, the way Mr. Jenkins at the general store slipped me a peppermint for helping stock shelves, or how the school choir practiced, God bless America, our voices rising pure and proud, filling the gym with hope. Summers meant swimming in the creek, cool water, rushing over hot skin. Tommy teaching me to float on my back, staring up at clouds that looked like dragons or ships sailing to adventure. We'd dry off on the bank eating apples tart and juicy sharing whispers about growing up, living the farm for the bright lights of Chicago, or maybe staying put to tend the land like Daddy did. Mama'd call us in for supper, the screen door slapping behind us, the table set with cornbread and Green's laughter flowing easy as the milk from the jug. Those meals, they were sacred, darling stories swapped about the day's finds, a lost calf or the bountiful yield binding us closer than blood alone. Faith wove through it all. Grace said before every bite, Sunday school lessons on kindness and perseverance, sticking like birds on your sock, reminding us to treat others as we'd want, being treated even when times pinched. Yet as I blossomed into 14, the war's end brought new beginnings, but also echoes of loss, the telegrams that came for some families shattering their worlds while ours held steady. I started helping more around the house, churning butter till my arms screamed, or mending socks by lamplight, my fingers learning the rhythm of needle and thread. Tommy, he courted a girl from town, sweet Jenny, with braids like mine and eyes full of mischief, walking her home after barn dances, the fiddle tunes lingering in the air, sweet as honeysuckle. I'd spy on them from the porch swing, heart full, knowing love was blooming like the roses mama tended by the steps, red and resilient against the frost. America was healing, 2 factories humming with post-war promise, the radio crooning about baby booms and suburbs rising. But in our corner, life stayed rooted deep in the soil, traditions passed down like heirlooms, polished with care. That photo secret, it faded some, but taught me patience, the art of holding questions till answers came natural as brethren. In those formative years, darling, we learned the measure of a life not in dollars but in deeds, the quiet heroism of showing up day after day, plowing through doubt like stubborn weeds. The early life, it was our foundation, solid as the oak out back, weathering lightning and wind, standing tall to shade the generations yet to come. And those shadows loomed larger ahead, the light from those days that never dimmed, guiding us forward with hope as steady as the heartbeat of the land we loved. Oh, darling, if those early years were the warm quilt Mama wrapped us in, the ones that followed were the fierce winds that tested every stitch till you wondered if it'll hold or fly apart like leaves in a gale. By the time I was 19, the world had shifted again, America celebrating peace with parades and new beginnings, but for us, the troubles were just gearing up quiet like thunder rumbling far off. Tommy, he was the first to feel the pull heading off to college on a partial scholarship, dreaming of becoming an engineer, building bridges that spanned the Mississippi strong as our family's resolve. I waved him goodbye from the depot, my heart full of pride and a pinch of envy because I'd stayed home helping on the farm courting a boy named Hank from the next county, over his laugh deep and easy like the river running steady. We married quick in 51, a simple ceremony at the church with mama's lace veil and daddy's proud nod, the war behind us, and a baby on the way that promised to fill our little house with laughter. Hank, he worked the fields with daddy, rising early to tend the crop, his hands soon as calloused as the man he called father, the two of them bonding over seed catalogs and stories of harvest moons past. Life hummed along sweet as sorghum for a spell, little Ellie Jr., born with Tommy's eyes, and my curl we called her Sissy, 'cause she was our secret joy, scampered around the yard chasing chickens while I stirred pots of stew on the wood stove. The 50s, they brought shiny cars and soda fountains in town, the radio crooning Elvis tunes that made Hank tap his boot even as he fixed the tractor. We scraped together for a radio of our own, listening to broadcasts about the Korean conflict far away, hoping it'd stay that way, our boys coming home heroes without losing too much. But secrets have roots, darling, and mine from that old photo started to twist deeper when Sissy took sick with the fever running high as a kite one winter night in 55. The doc came miles over slick roads, prescribing sulfur drugs that saved her, but left me wondering about Daddy's past, that girl in the picture, if he'd carried hidden pains too. I confessed it to Hank one evening by the fire, his arm round me tight as he whispered, it didn't matter, we were our own story, writ fresh on blank pages. That talk, it mended something in me, taught me to lean on love when doubts crept in like fog over the fields. Yet the winds picked up fiercer when Tommy came home from college, not with a degree, but with stars in his eyes for the service. Again, America calling his sons to Vietnam, a place we'd barely heard of on the maps at school. It was 66, he enlisted proud as punch figuring. It'd be short like Korea, a chance to serve and see the world. I begged him to stay. Hank and I were two more young'uns now, a boy named after his uncle and a baby girl, but Tommy's mind was set firm as oak saying freedom ain't free, and he'd be back before the corn tasseled. We saw him off at the bus stop, the whole family there, tears streaming as the engine roared to life, carrying him toward jungles thick with heat and horror. Letters came at first full of bravado, talking of buddies and base camps, but then they slowed the stamps, postmarked from places that sounded like bad dreams. Hank held me close those nights when worry gnawed like a rat in the walls, our prayers mixing with the wind howling outside, praying for his safe return. The nation was divided into protests on the TV newsreels showing kids with signs and long hair marching against the war, while back home in Iowa, we flew the flag, high supporting our boy, even as doubt whispered in the quiet hours. Then the telegram hit like a hammer to the heart. May of '68, missing in action, presumed dead, the words cold and final knocking the breath from Mama's lungs as she read it aloud, her voice breaking on Tommy's name. I drove to her place, reckless over gravel road, Sissy clinging to my skirt, scared of the sorrow hanging heavy in the air. We buried an empty casket in the family plot, hymns sung solemn under gray skies, the town turning out with casseroles and condolences that couldn't fill the hole. Hank, he took it hard too, working longer hours in the fields trying to outrun the grief, but nights he'd stare at the ceiling wondering what kind of war stole a good man without a trace. Secrets piled on then, darling, 'cause I started having dreams vivid as daylight of Tommy calling from the mist, saying he was alive, hiding from something shameful, a choice in the bush that haunted him deep. I kept them to myself, figuring they were just wishes wrapped in sorrow, but they chipped at my peace like frost on window panes. The family rallied, though potlucks at the church where stories flowed like coffee strong and hot showering memories of Tommy's laugh to keep his spirit near. Resilience, it showed up in the small ways, Mama planting extra flowers by his stone saying beauty fights the dark best. As the '70s dawned, inflation bit hard like a frost, and July prices climbing faster than cornstalks, gas lines stretching long as the eye could see, and our farm teetered on the edge. Hank and I were married young, full of hope, but now with 4 mouths to feed and loans peeling up like snowdrifts, we scrimped on everything, mending clothes till threads frayed thin and eating beans more nights than beef. Sissy, she was growing into a teen with dreams of her own, talking about living for the city nursing school maybe, but the money just wasn't there. One evening in '73, as Nixon resigned on the radio, the weight of it all crashed down Hank, coming home with layoff notice from the co-op machine, sitting idle because feed costs soared too high. We sat at the table silent as stone, Sissy picking at her plate, eyes red from fighting with her brother over scraps. I felt the struggle deep in my bones, the same ache from losing Tommy, now layered with this economic storm that pinched every dream. But we pushed on darling Hank, taking odd jobs fixing fences for neighbors while I sewed quilts to sell at the fair, my fingers flying fast as prayers, stitching patterns of stars and stripes to remind us of better days. The community had held us up again, barn-raising style, helping with the harvest when our backs gave out whispers of hope that the recession would pass like a bad spell. Oh, but the real heartbreak brewed in the family fold, Sissy. She fell in with a rough crowd after high school boys with fast cars and faster talk, leading her down a path of parties and pills that the '70s made seem glamorous on TV. By '78, she was gone, running off to Des Moines, chasing highs that promised escape from the farm's grind, leaving me with a phone that rang silent and letters full of excuses. Hank and I would drive to the city, searching diners and motels hard in our throats, but she'd vanish like smoke, resilience testing us to the core as I prayed nightly for her return whole and healed. Secrets unfolded slow. Then one night in '79, a call from a hospital, Sissy overdosed, but stable, her voice weak on the line, apologizing through tears for the worry she'd caused. We brought her home that summer, frail as a bird wing clipped, but willing to try Hank, building her a room off the kitchen where she could mend slow. It wasn't easy, darling, arguments flaring like summer storms, trust hard to rebuild, but love it won out piece by piece like puzzling a quilt from scraps. America was hurting too, stagflation gripping tight, factories shutting down, and the Rust Belt echoes reaching our Iowa fields as corn prices dipped low, forcing sales of equipment we'd scrimped for years. The '80s brought Reagan's promise of morning in America, but for us the sun rose slow, Hank's health failing from years of hard labor, a cough that wouldn't quit, turning into something the doc called serious lungs, scarred from dust and diesel. Sissy, she got clean, married a steady fella from town, starting a life of her own. But the guilt lingered in her eyes, visits full of quiet apologies that mended more than words. Tommy's shadow, it loomed larger, 2 rumors trickling in from old army pals saying some POWs came home quiet, never speaking of the jungle horrors that broke them. I wrote letters to the VA begging for news, but nothing came back, just silence thick as fog, resilience, my only companion as I tended Hank through chemo sessions, driving to Iowa City weekly, the road stretching endless under gray skies. Money drained fast, medical bills peeling like the deficits on the news. Our savings from good years evaporating, leaving us to choose between groceries and gas. The kids, they helped what they could. The boy sending checks from his job in Chicago. The little ones pitching in with chores, but the strain it showed in frayed tempers and unspoken fears. Yet through it, Hank, he joked weak as he was saying, we'd beat this like we beat the odds, before his hand in mine, steady as vowing. By the late 80s, the farm was slipping away, auctions looming as debts mounted, the recession of '82 still echoing in empty silos and foreclosed neighbors, packing up for California dreams. One spring day in '89, Hank passed peaceful in his sleep, breathing easy at last, the room filled with the scent of lilacs from the window, Mama coming to hold my hand, her own eyes wet with shared loss. I buried him beside Tommy's empty plot, the preacher speaking of eternal rest while wind whipped the flags we placed there, red, white, and blue fluttering defiant. Secrets they bubbled up then in the grief, a box of Hank's letters found in the attic once from his youth hinting at a war wound from Korea. He'd never mentioned a shrapnel scar that weakened him long before the cough. It hurt fresh knowing he carried that alone to spare me worry, but it also strengthened my resolve, darling, teaching me that hiding pains don't make them vanish. They just wait to surface when you're raw. The family circled closer, Sissy taking over farm chores with her husband, their little ones running around bringing light to the dim days. Resilience, it bloomed quiet like perennials pushing through cracked earth. We sold off acres to keep the house paying taxes with pride intact. Entering the 90s, the world spun fast, the Gulf War, flashing on CNN, quick and clean, unlike Vietnam's mess, but it stirred old ghosts, making me wonder about Tommy Moore, his absence, a hole that time didn't fill. Sissy, she thrived, her family growing, grandbabies calling me Nana, filling the porch with giggles that chased shadows away. But economic woes lingered, and after changing the game, small farms like ours, squeezing tighter as big ag, took over prices, dropping low as hope sometimes. I took a job at the diner pouring coffee and pies to locals, listening to their tales of layoff and loss, nodding because I knew the taste of struggle bitter as burnt toast. Secrets kept coming one evening in '94. A stranger knocked door, a vet from Nam handed me a faded photo of Tommy alive and the camp eyes hollow but breathing. He said Tommy'd saved him once, but couldn't save himself from the guilt wandering after release, too ashamed to face home. My knees buckled, darling, tears flowing free as that hook in the attic, the truth twisting like a knife. He was out there somewhere, maybe passed on alone without us. I searched quiet letters to agencies, nothing firm, but the knowing it freed something allowed forgiveness for the silence that stretched decades. The new millennium dawned with promise, internet buzzing about .com booms. But for this old farm, it was more of the same 9/11 shaking the nation, towers falling like our dreams once did, pulling us together in church, praying for the lost and the fighting. My grandkids, they grew tech savvy, showing me emails and news clips of wars in deserts, reminding me of Tommy's time, the cycle of sacrifice endless. Sissy's boy, he joined up after high school serving in Iraq, coming home changed, but whole letters full of pride in the uniform. Struggles they layered on, finances tight as ever, medical for the grandkids' braces and such, eaten into retirement I scraped from Social Security checks. But resilience, it was the thread holding us, Honk's words echoing. We'd make do, and we did community gardens sprouting up shiring veggies like in the war years potlucks where stories swapped healed old wounds. Then the big one hit, the Great Recession of '08, walls crumbling on Wall Street, echoes crashing to Main Street farms, foreclosing left and right. Our neighbors packing U-Haul trailers, heads hung low. Hank's gone, but his wisdom lingered. I refinanced what I could, sold heirlooms, careful the china Mama loved, but kept the photo album thick with faces that mattered. Sissy lost her job at the factory, laying off hundreds, her husband driving truck miles for pennies, resilience testing us fierce as a blizzard burying the roads. We gathered more than supper, stretched thin with dumplings and loved grandkids playing games by lantern light when power bills pinched. Secrets resolved. Some that recession winter letter arrived real, this time from a lawyer. In California, Tommy had passed in '05, cancer eating him quiet, leaving a small inheritance and a note apologizing for the heathen, saying the war broke him, but love for us kept him breathing. I wept for days, darling, grief, fresh but closure, sweet as rain after drought, visiting his grave, simple plot in the sun. We placed a stone from the farm roots, coming full circle. Through all those struggles, the tragedies that bent us low, the secrets that shadowed our steps, resilience rose steady, unyielding as the Mississippi flowing on. Vietnam took Tommy's presence, but not his spirit, echoed in the strength of his nieces and nephews. The farm standing still under my watch, grandbabies learning to plant seeds, knowing hard times pass, but family endures. The recessions, they came and went like seasons testing soil, but yielding deeper roots loved the fertilizer that grew us taller. Oh, darling, life ain't fair. It kicks when you're down. But in America's heartland, we learn to stand dust off and keep walking hand in hand, 'cause hope is the sunrise after the longest night always coming round. Oh, darling, if the struggles were the deep ruts in the road that shook us to the core, the resolution came soft like the first thaw after a bitter winter melting away, the frost and revealing green shoots pushing through where you least expected. It was the spring of 2010, not long after that letter about Tommy arrived like a long-delayed package from heaven, the one that confirmed he'd passed quiet in California, but left behind words that stitched up holes I'd carried for decades. I was sitting on the porch that morning, coffee going cold in my mug, the farm quiet, save for the robins chattering about new beginnings, when Sissy pulled up in her old Chevy Dust, billowing like smoke from a chimney. She had that look on her face, the kind that mixes tears with a smile, eyes bright as the creek after rain, and in her hand, a manila envelope thicker than the ones from the seed catalog. Turns out Tommy'd not just written that note, he'd recorded tapes over the years, speaking his truth in a voice cracked from years of silence, explaining the horror of the jungle, how a split-second choice to save his squad left a buddy behind the guilt, eating him alive till he couldn't face the pride in mama's eyes or the welcome in mine. He spoke of wandering the West, working odd jobs, ranch hand in Montana, trucker through the Dakotas, always sending money anonymous to help with the farm because he couldn't bear to show his face. I listened to those tapes all afternoon, the reel-to-reel player whirring on the kitchen table, Sissy's hand in mine squeezing tight as his words washed over us like balm on sunburned skin. He apologized for the heat and said the war had stolen his innocence, but not his love for us that he'd watched from afar, seeing the grandkids grow through letters we never knew he got. By evening, the sun dipping low, painting the fields gold. I felt a weight lift, something profound, shifting inside, turning grief to grace. We buried his ashes that summer under the big oak, the one where Tommy and I played explorers as kids, the family gathering from near and far cousins I hadn't seen since the 70s Sharon stories that bridged the years. Sissy, she led the prayer, her voice steady, now full of the strength she'd fought for her own dark times. And as we placed wildflowers on the ground, a peace settled deep, reminding me that secrets, when brought to light, lose their power to wound. America was healing too, post-recession, stirring with stimulus checks and jobs trickling back to the heartland. But for us, the real recovery was in that circle of kin, holding hands under the Iowa sky, promising no more hiding, no more silence. From there, darling, the threads started weaving tighter. Sissy and her husband, they took over more of the farm chores, letting me ease back, knees creaking like the old barn door, but heart lighter than it had been in years. Her boy, the one who served in Iraq, he came home on leave that fall, bringing his young wife and their first babe, a little girl with Tommy's dimple in her chin. We called her Hope, because that's what she sparked in us all. We'd rock on the porch evenings, her tiny fist gripping my finger as I sang the hymns Mama taught me soft and low, the melody carrying echoes of better days. The recession's grip loosened slow banks, forgiving some debts after Hank's passing, and community funds from the church helping with taxes that are piled high. Neighbors who struggled alongside us now thriving again, trading tools and tips like in the war. Years of co-op forming to buy seed in bulk, keeping small farms afloat against the big machines. I volunteered at the senior center shouting quilting lessons, my fingers still nimble enough to guide the young ones through patterns of stars, reminding them that stitch by stitch you mend what's torn. Forgiveness flowed easy, then darling, for Sissy's past slips, for Tommy's long absence, even for the old photo secret of Daddy's youth that I'd puzzled over as a girl, now seeing it as just a chapter, not the whole book. But the peaks, they came gentle rising like bread in the pan one Sunday in 2012 when the whole clan gathered for a reunion bigger than any we'd known, potluck tables groaning under fried chicken and potato salad, the air thick with laughter and the scent of apple pie baking in the community oven. Grandkids ran wild chats and fireflies as dusk fell, their parents swapping tales of city life and farm wisdom while I sat queen-like in my rocker watching it all with eyes misty. Sissy, she stood up, then clinking a glass of lemonade, her voice catching as she thanked me for the resilience I'd passed down, the way I'd held the family through storms without bending. Tears flowed free that night, hugs lingered on longer than usual as we shared heirlooms, Tommy's old dog tags, passed to his namesake nephew, a locket from Hank that Sissy wore close to her heart. It was there under the string lights, twinkling like stars brought down, that I felt the tragedies resolved, not erased, but transformed into stories that strengthened us like steel forged in fire. The USA spirit shone through to Obama's hope and change ringing true in our little town. Stimulus building roads that connected us, better wind farms sprouting on the hills, providing jobs for the young folks staying put instead of living for the coast. As the years softened further into the teens, darling grandbabies multiplied, filling the house with chaos and joy, the kind that makes an old heart sing. Little hope she grew toddling to the creek where Tommy once taught me to skip stones, her laughter echoing like bells clearing any lingering shadows. We faced small bumps, sure, a drought in 15 that parched the fields, but we irrigated from the well-shared water with neighbors. Like always, resilience a habit now as natural as breathing. Sissy discovered letters from her own youth once she'd hidden in a drawer full of regrets from the pill days, explaining her running off as fear of failing us, not lack of love. We burned them together in the fire pit, watching the flames dance, her head on my shoulder, whispering forgiveness both ways, the air sweet with closure. The farm turned profitable, slow, organic corn, fetching higher prices at the market stands where I'd sell with the grandkids, their enthusiasm drawing customers who lingered for stories of our history. Secrets they surfaced one last time in 2017 when DNA tests became the rage, kin connecting online, revealing a half-cousin from daddy's side. That mystery girl in the photo turned out to be an aunt who'd married elsewhere but kept ties loose, sending photos of Iowa kin we'd never met. We visited her in Nebraska, a road trip full of singing along to country radio, the miles melting away as stories bridged the generations. Hope it built steady, darling, in the everyday acts, planting a victory garden like in WWII, rows of tomatoes and beans that fed the food bank when harvests overflowed. The grandkids, they learned our tales round the supper table, no more hiding Tommy's war truths, shared age-appropriately as lessons in courage and the cost of freedom. Sissy's family grew stronger, her marriage a rock after the storms, therapy sessions in town, helping unpack the 70s baggage, turning pain to wisdom passed down. I traveled a bit too, a bus tour to Washington, D.C. in 2000. Monuments to WWII and the recession recovery exhibits showing how America bends but don't break families like ours, the backbone of it all. Back home, the porch reunions became tradition, every fourth showering barbecues and fireworks that lit the night, reminding us of the sparks that keep hope alive. Resilience, it wasn't just surviving anymore, it was thriving, blooming full like the roses Hank planted years back, red and resilient against any frost. By 2020, the world threw another curve, pandemic shutting down the nation, masks and distance, testing our bonds. But we adapted quick video calls with the grandkids, their faces smiling on screen, sharing recipes for no-bake cookies to ease the isolation. Sissy organized drive-by birthdays, cars, parroting past the farm, honking horns and signs, waving love from afar, the community closer than ever, dropping groceries on porches without a word. Secrets of health fears we shared openly, check-ins daily, keeping the loneliness at bay. And when vaccines came, we lined up arm in arm, the jab a small sting for big freedom. The farm supplied fresh eggs and milk to those in need, a throwback to ration days, but with modern twists, solar panels on the barn cutting costs and sustaining the land for the great-grandbabes on the way. Tragedies from the past, they echoed faint. Now teaching the young ones to wash hands and stay kind, the resilience gene strong as ever flowing through the bloodline. Hope, darling, resolution, it came in waves, gentle and grand, culminating one crisp autumn day in 2023 when the whole extended family surprised me with a quilt, a masterpiece stitched from fabrics of our lives. Tommy's old shirt, Hank's work pants, Mama's apron, all pieced together in a star pattern that told our story without words. We gathered in the barn, now converted to a gathering hall, lights strung warm, the air filled with roast and pie, the grandkids performing a play of our tales, Tommy as the hero, Sissy as the wanderer returning home, me as the narrator holding it all. Tears flowed, but joyful ones, hugs that lingered and promises to keep the circle wide, inviting more kin to join. As the even wound down stars winking overhead, I looked round at faces young and old, the farm standing proud, the secrets resolved, the tragedies turned to triumphs, and felt the hope swell full like a harvest moon rising slow. Life, darling, it circles back, always the heartland way, resilient, hopeful, binding us in love that outlasts any storm. Darling, as I sit here in the evening light, filtering through the lace curtains, the kind Mama sewed by hand long ago, my mind wanders back over the twists and turns of this long life like leaves floating lazy on the creek after a rain. We've walked through the heartaches, the secrets that hid in the shadows, and the strength that pulled us up time and again. Now, in my 83 years, I see it all clear as the stars on a crisp Iowa night, a tapestry woven from threads of sorrow and joy that makes the whole picture worth the pricks along the way. Life ain't a straight path, honey. It's more like that old dirt road to town full of potholes and detours. But each one teaches you something deep about holding on when the wind howls fierce. I think on Tommy now, his voice from those tapes echoing soft in my memory. The war that stole his peace but couldn't steal the love he carried quiet for us all. And it reminds me that resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about piecing yourself back together with whatever you've got left, even if it's just a prayer and a pot of coffee. The tragedies, they shaped us, sure, the Depression's lean days, double World War D's long goodbyes, Vietnam's cruel silence, the recessions that pinched till it hurt. But through them all, family was the anchor, the one thing that didn't shift no matter how the world rocked. You know, darling, looking back on those early years, the farm sunrises and mama's hymns, they weren't just memories. They were the foundation, the solid ground that let us stand tall when the storms came. I learned young that America is built on folks like us, small town hearts, working the soil, sharing the load, from Victory Gardens in 42 to community co-ops after '08. The spirit of pulling together, that's what keeps the flag flying high. Hank, he taught me that too. His steady hand in mine through the 50s boom and the 70s bus whispering we'd make it 'cause love don't quit easy, and neither do we. And Sissy, her wandering ways in the pill haze of youth. They scared me deep, but watching her rise, Phoenix-like clean and strong with grandbabies in tow, showed me forgiveness is the real healer, the kind that mends more than any doctor. Secrets like Tommy's hiding or Daddy's old photo, they weigh heavy at first like stones in your pocket, but when you set them down, share them in the light, they turn to lessons light as feathers teaching that hiding only makes the hurt last longer. Oh honey, if I'd known back then what I know now, I'd have whispered to my young self, chin up girl, the heart breaks, but it beats on stronger for the cracking. Now, as the grandkids gather around the table, their laughter ringing like bells on a Sunday morning, I see the legacy unfolding the way resilience passes down quiet like a recipe for cornbread, handed from generation to generation. Little Hope, with her daddy's eyes, she asks about Great Uncle Tommy, wide-eyed, wanting the full story. And I tell it gentle and no sugarcoating, because truth is the best teacher, showing her that wars and woes come, but courage comes too born from the same soil. We've got great grandbabes now toddling through the yard, learning to plant beans the way I did at 9, and it fills this old heart with a hope so pure it chases any lingering shadow. America, she's changed so much from the radio days of FDR to the screens, glowing in every pocket. But the core stays true, families sticking close through pandemics and protests, recessions, and rebuilds the heartland way of neighbor helping neighbor without fanfare. I think on the '08 crash, how we lost neighbors to foreclosures, but gained deeper bonds, sharing meals from what little we had, reminding me that plenty ain't measured in dollars, but in the warmth of a shared story or a hug that says you're not alone. Darling, reflecting on it, I reckon the biggest lesson is hope. It's the stubborn spark that flickers even in the blackest night, the one that got us through Hank's illness, the empty casket for Tommy Sissy's dark road home. It's what makes you rise after losing the farm acres or hearing the news of another war pulling young ones away. Faith played its part to church on Sundays with hymns that lift the soul high as the steeple reminding us the good Lord's got a plan, even when it don't make sense from down here. And forgiveness, honey, that's the quiet power, the one that let me embrace Tommy's memory without bitterness or welcome Sissy's return without grudges, turning pain to peace like rain soaking dry earth. Life's tragedies, they ain't the end. They're the forge that tempers the spirit, making you kinda wiser, more willing to reach out a hand to someone stumbling in their own storm. I've seen it in the town, the way folks rallied after floods or factory shutdowns, potlucks and prayer chains holding the community whole, just like in World War II when we saved scraps for the war effort, knowing every bit mattered. Oh, but let's talk viral for a moment, darling, because these stories, they spread like wildfire on dry grass, touching hearts across the miles. If you've listened this far and felt a tug in your chest, maybe it's time to share it with your own kin, the ones you love but don't talk deep with enough. Pass this tale along to a child, a sibling, an old friend. Let them know that behind every smile there's a story of struggle and shine. Encourage them to call home, to forgive quick, to hold tight, because time slips faster than you think and regrets weigh heavier than joy ever could. In this big old country from coast to coast, we're all connected by these threads of trials and triumphs, so hit that share button or whisper it over coffee. Keep the stories alive, because they heal us all a little more each time. YouTube, it's a window to the world now. Faceless voices like mine, reaching folks in cities and small towns alike, reminding them we're in this together. The American dream ain't just stars and stripes. It's the grit and grace of everyday heroes like you and me. As I rock here, the fire crackling soft in the hearth, I feel grateful deep in my bones for the path walked, the peaks and valleys that made me who I am. Resilience, darling. It's not a gift some are born with. It's a muscle built slow through tears and toil. But oh, it's worth every ache. Cherish your family, honey. Call them today. Spill the secrets, mend the fences, because in the end, that's what lasts longer than any hardship. The love that weathers every storm, rising hopeful with the dawn. Life's a journey full of heartbreak, sure, but laced with light, the kind that warms you through if you let it. And that's the truth from this old grandma's heart straight to yours.